The fog rolled into Grayhaven 3 nights before the tide turned black. It did not drift in gently from the sea. It poured. A vertical wall of white that swallowed the harbor lights, smothered the cliffs, and pressed against the windows of every home like a held breath. By morning the boats were gone. Not sunk. Not wrecked. Gone. The docks remained, slick with brine and something darker than seaweed. And beneath the boards, something knocked. The harbor that emptied. Mara Ellison was the first to step onto Pier 9 after the fog thinned. She was not brave. She was practical. Her father's trawler, the Mercy, had been moored there for 20 years. He had died the previous winter, and she had kept the boat out of habit more than hope. Now its ropes lay coiled neatly on the dock, untied. The sea beyond the harbor wall was still. Too still. No gulls. No wind. No tide. Just a flat, endless stretch of water the color of spilled ink. Mara, someone called behind her. It was old Tomas Bell, who had fished these waters longer than anyone alive. He didn't look at the sea. He looked at the sky. Don't listen if it calls, he said. Listen to what? Tomas swallowed. You'll know. Something thudded beneath the pier. Slow. Measured. 3 knocks. The sound of wood answering from below. 2. The tidal silence. By noon, every boat in Grayhaven had vanished. 27 vessels. Not a splinter left behind. The Coast Guard refused to sail. Their engines would not start. Compasses spun lazily in circles, never settling. At 2:14 p.m. the ocean exhaled. The tide surged forward without a wave, without foam, just a sudden rise that swallowed the lowest steps of the harbor. And with it came the sound. Full. Resonant. Not crashing like surf. Not groaning like shifting ice. It was rhythmic. Like breathing through a throat too vast to see. People stood along the cliffs and listened. Some began to hum without realizing. Matching pitch. 3. What the water carried. That night, the fog returned thicker than before. Mara stayed inside her father's old cottage overlooking the harbor. She had nailed the windows shut, locked the doors, turned the radio up loud. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the radio cut to static. Then, through the static, a voice. Not speaking. Calling. It rose and fell in a long layered tone that made her teeth ache. Outside, something heavy scraped against the cottage door. Mara did not move. The wood bent inward. Another scrape. And then, a wet handprint pressed slowly against the glass of the front window. The fingers were too long. Jointed too many times. And between each knuckle, thin membranes stretched, glistening. The voice on the radio deepened. Answering the hand. Or commanding it. For the drowned choir. By morning, 3 townspeople were missing. Their beds were soaked. Not with seawater. With brackish, black liquid that smelled of rust and old shells. Sheriff Halden organized a search along the shoreline. They found footprints in the sand. Not leading into the water. Leading out. Long, dragging impressions as if something heavy had been pulled toward the houses. At the edge of the harbor, the tide receded for the first time in 2 days. The seabed lay exposed. And in it, shapes. Hundreds of them. Tall. Lined up in perfect rows beneath the shallow water. Waiting. When the tide rolled back in, the shapes moved. The depth beneath the depth. Tomas Bell gathered the remaining townsfolk in the old lighthouse. It's not the sea, he said. His hands shook as he lit a lantern. It's what the sea covers. He spoke of a trench miles offshore. Deeper than any chart marked. A place fishermen avoided because nets returned shredded and empty. They sleep down there, he whispered. And the fog is their breath rising. Mara thought of the vanished boats. Of the missing townspeople. Of the voice that had come through her radio. What do they want? She asked. Tomas looked at the harbor through the lighthouse window. They've been patient, he said. Long enough. As if in response, the fog outside pulsed. The lighthouse glass vibrated. And from the water below, the breathing became synchronized. Faster. Hungry. 6. The return of the boats. At dusk, the first hull emerged. Not sailing. Floating upright without sails or crew. The Mercy drifted into the harbor without a ripple. Mara felt her chest tighten. The boat looked untouched. Clean. Polished. Almost new. One by one, the other vessels followed. 27 silent ghosts gliding into their original moorings. Ropes lifted from the docks. Knots tied themselves. The town watched without speaking. A hatch on the Mercy creaked open. Something climbed out. It wore her father's coat. His hat. But the face beneath was smooth. Featureless. Like wet clay waiting to be shaped. Behind it, more figures emerged from the other boats, each wearing someone familiar, each unfinished. The fog thickened around them like a stage curtain. And then, they began to sing. 7. The true tide. The song was not sound alone. It was pressure. It bent knees, forced heads downward, vibrated inside skulls. The figures stepped from the boats onto the docks. Water poured from their sleeves and cuffs but never touched the ground. It slid upward instead, rejoining the fog above. Mara felt something inside her chest respond. A pull, like a hook set deep in muscle. She staggered back. All along the harbor, townspeople dropped to their knees. The song shifted pitch. Higher, sharper, commanding. And the ocean obeyed. The water in the harbor rose vertically, forming a wall around Grayhaven. Not crashing in. Encircling. Trapping. The true tide was not water. It was ascent. The figures split open at their seams. Inside each borrowed body was darkness. And within that darkness, movement. Thin, luminous threads extended from their hollow centers into the chests of the living. Connecting. Claiming. 8. The breaking point. Mara felt the thread pierce her sternum. Cold. Precise. She saw her father's unfinished face tilt toward her. Not cruel. Not kind. Empty. As if waiting to be filled. The voice from the radio echoed in her memory. Calling. She understood then. The missing boats had not been taken. They had been harvested. The sea did not want bodies. It wanted vessels. Something vast beneath the trench was rising, and it needed shapes to walk the shore. Mara forced air into her lungs and screamed. Not in fear. In refusal. A sound wild and off-key. It shattered the harmony for a single, fragile moment. The threads flickered. The wall of water trembled. The unfinished faces faltered. And from far beyond the harbor, from the trench beneath the world, came a roar. Not anger. Not pain. Recognition. 9. When the fog recedes. At dawn, the fog withdrew as suddenly as it had come. The boats were gone again. So were the figures. Half the town stood dazed along the harbor, thin red marks over their hearts. The ocean looked normal. Blow. Wind ruffled. Alive. But the trench remained. Waiting. And sometimes, when the tide falls unusually low in Grayhaven, dark shapes can be seen far below the surface. Lined in rows. Perfectly still. Practicing how to stand. Because the sea is patient. And one day, it will need more vessels.